You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Matt Reynolds. I'm here with Niki Sims. It's been a few weeks since I've been on the show.
I know, it feels like ages.
It's because you've been on all the shows.
I had a break this last week. Everyone got to listen to Jason and CJ.
That's right.
Yeah, that was nice.
It's weird to listen to two guys with IQs like 30 points higher than the rest of us.
It's like rewind 30 seconds, rewind 30 seconds.
I know. Jason is so smart. I love listening to him talk about pain. That guy is literally on the cutting edge of pain management.
Yeah.
He's come down and stayed with us a few times. I'll just sit and listen to him. He'll just blow my mind with what they're doing. Like really trying to replace opiates, the same thing that opiates do, but without all the addiction and obviously cultural and massive fallout problems that opiates have caused. Like they're working on that sort of thing. That's pretty amazing. And so
that is amazing.
Today we're going to kick off really kind of a three-part series. And we don't do series as much anymore, but we're going to kick off a three-part series about communication with our clients. We're going to talk about verbal communication today, and this works both ways. So whether you're a coach and trying to learn how to communicate effectively to your client, or whether you're a client and learning how to try to interpret what your coach is saying to you or communicating to you, I think there's going to be value here both ways. So we're going to talk about verbal communication this week. I think we're going to talk about tactile next week and visual the following week. So we've got kind of back-to-back weeks on how to communicate effectively between a client and a coach. And really that goes both ways. It's a two-way street. So one thing I want to do at the start of this podcast that we normally do at the end is if you've been receiving value from this podcast, we would love a 5-star review. This really, really helps us. And we're one of the top reviewed podcasts in strength. By the way, thank you to Garage Gym Reviews, who voted us the best strength podcast in the world. That was an independent company and gave us a really nice award. And so we're very thankful for that. And I think it was really focused around the fact that they said, we get right to the meat of the matter pretty quick. You can look at the titles of the podcast and know exactly what it's going to be about. And so there's not a lot of back and forth banter, although there's some of that and some jokes and stuff, but we really try to stay on topic. And so
we don't like to have too much fun.
We don't like to have too much fun. If this has brought you value, we would love a 5-star review, specifically on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or just wherever you listen. Apple Podcasts is really the one that drives you up the algorithm. As a matter of fact, Apple Podcasts suggested us like crazy for 2 or 3 weeks in a row a few weeks ago, and it just about doubled our podcast downloads.
Wow.
So when people are just going through and they're looking at suggested for fitness, that's how much it helps. I mean, it literally makes like tens of thousands of more people hear the podcast. So
I wonder how many people maybe got into training because of that. That'd be neat to think about.
It would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we do what we do. So I think I shared with you guys, the leadership team, we've had several people sign up lately for online coaching in like the strangest of places, right? Like Trinidad and Tobago. I'll just be honest, I'm not entirely even sure where that is. And so, but I'm like, they probably don't have a great coach there, you know? And it's like, this is awesome that they have access to a professional coach.
Yeah, totally.
Where they're at. And so,
man, I bet their gym situation is pretty rad though.
I know.
They can see the beach.
Right.
Rusty barbells.
That's right. Outside.
Beach scene. Sounds
That's exactly
great.
right. I love watching that stuff. I was watching Andrew squat just now doing 405 for 5 out in the Washington mountains. And I was like, man, that looks awesome. That looks like a good, fun set of
It was gorgeous.
405s. Yeah. Much better than inside a gym. So this is a good time of year to be training outside for sure. This is a great time for Rachel and I to be. We walk around in the neighborhood in the morning. We train and go to the pool in the afternoon. So it's a fun time of year for sort of fitness and living that lifestyle. So yes, we would love a 5-star review. Say nice things about us if you can. It will help drive up the algorithm for sure, and that helps us out. So let's talk about verbal communication a little bit. So communication, and really verbal is the primary form of communication that we're going to have between a coach and a client, is, man, it is so important. You have to be an effective communicator as a coach to be able to get out of your client what you want. And one of the things I've said in the past, and I don't want to overplay this, but there are coaches that have great coaching eyes who just aren't able to connect and communicate well with their clients, whether that's in person or online. And that is a skill that must be learned. Actually, we had a family out to dinner last night from church, and I was talking about what I got out of 9 years of junior high teaching was that if you can hold the attention of 30 or 32 or 35 junior high kids in a classroom, than I can hold the attention of a 40-year-old business executive listening to me about his squats. Like that's like you really, I mean, that's a job skill that I learned to be able to speak through. And so for me, one of the things I think that really honed my verbal communication with clients is that when I was the head strength coach of a big high school in Missouri, where I would have somewhere between 60 and 120 kids per afternoon. So during the off season, I would have two groups of 60, and that one would come in, and then an hour later, another would come in. And in season, I would have one group of 60, and you're like coaching 60 people at the same time. Well, you've got to be really efficient at what you say. You got to know everybody's name, because you can't just go sit back.
Yeah, like who are you talking to?
Yeah, there's like 23 kids squatting at the same time.
Sit back, Chad, and 30 kids. Like, no, I meant you,
exactly
Aiden,
right.
and like 15 other kids.
That's exactly right. And so it really, I'm thankful for those years. I'm also thankful that I don't live that life anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm very thankful for those years that it helped hone my verbal communication skills. And so what for me, I found in both in-person and online coaching, both, I want to talk about what that looks like online here in a minute with you, is I want to say the least amount of words that get the most return on investment or get my client to do the most amount of change or the most positive change I'm trying to get in the fewest amount of words.
Yeah, being efficient is super important, huh?
Yeah. How do you approach that I remember the first time you went to Tulsa and you coached the Hambricks, and Scott called me and said, I think Niki Sims might be the best verbal communicating coach I've ever met in my life. I don't know if you know this. Yeah, he called me. He's like, I think she might be the best coach literally in the world.
Gosh.
And I mean, that's a hard guy to please.
Huge compliment.
That's a hard guy to please. And so, of course, you and I have taught, God, probably over 100 seminars at this point together.
Yeah.
What have you learned over those years and how to communicate effectively, just considering verbally, to your clients, or even to whether that is somebody you've coached for years and they know your voice and they know what you're trying to say, versus somebody is at a seminar or somebody comes in from out of town. It's the first time you've ever met them. How does that change how you might communicate to them, or what have you learned?
Well, I think one big important component of verbal communication is really similar how, when we're programming for someone, we meet them where they're at. When you're delivering a verbal cue, you have to meet them where they're at in terms of their level of understanding.
Yeah.
So you have to understand their body awareness. You have to understand what they know already about lifting jargon, or if they don't know any at all, what they understand about anatomy. Do they know where their butt is? Some people have no idea where their butt is. So whatever you're saying has to be understandable. And that speaks to the importance that you just brought up about being efficient.
Yep.
The more words you use, the less they're going to be able to understand it.
That's right.
And if you're trying to fill it in with like names of muscles and big, 3-syllable words, like it's not going to work. So you have to meet them with where they're at in the rep and where they're at with their level of understanding.
Right. So to give an example of, and I want to talk about, there's two different types of verbal communication. There is the teaching portion of the lifts where you can be a little more verbal, and there's the cueing portion, which occurs during the lifts. But as an example, I've seen this many, many times where somebody's like, okay, give me a big Valsalva, very controlled eccentric, and now fast concentric. People are like, I don't know what any of those words mean. There's none of those words that make any sense, right? So instead, you could just say big breath. You could often even just, and here's a funny, interesting verbal cue. Sometimes a verbal cue is just a sound. Like you could literally just go.
Yeah, that one's good.
It's so weird how
they'll just do it.
They'll just do it
automatically. Yeah.
They'll just do it automatically. You don't even have to say big breath. You just make the big breath. And then it's like this weird instinctive thing that they do. And then you go, okay, slow on the way down. Now fast on the way up.
Oh, so much better. Yeah.
And that alone, it's like everybody knows what that is. So that's a great point that, are we dealing with a gym bro that's been in the gym for 20 years? Or are we dealing with somebody who's a newbie that's like, I don't know what any of these words mean? And I think we've talked about the Feynman technique lots of times, like this, being able to take things that are complicated.
Yeah.
And teaching a squat, or teaching especially like a snatch or a clean or something, being able to teach that to a kindergartner, a third grader, a fifth grader, like whatever that is, an elementary school kid, that is really key as a coach. You've got to be able to do that. And I think often people will get hired in a personal training setting and they'll try to impress their clients by using big words. But the reality is, I just want the client to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's what they want. That's what they hired you for.
That's exactly right.
They didn't hire to listen to you talk. They hired you so that they could get better at something.
That's exactly right. Now, it's fun sometimes to walk through some of those words between the sets. You've got some downtime if you're in-person coaching between the sets, so you can say, here's what a Valsalva is. And you know what, like, it's just the big breath that you take.
Right.
It's the same thing that you do when if somebody got ready to punch you in the stomach, or if somebody was like, if you're bearing down to go to the bathroom, it's like, it's a big breath. You kind of close your throat off and you bear down in your abs and you say, that's a Valsalva.
And so doing that, you've increased their vocabulary. You've leveled up their understanding.
But you never want to increase vocabulary during the cueing while the bar is on their back.
Last rep of a set of 5 is not the time to introduce a new phrase.
That's exactly right. And so I think often about what I'm trying to teach. The teaching occurs when the bar is not on their back or not in their hands. And the cueing occurs, which is like very short, 1 word, 2 word, very tiny phrases that are a trigger that gets them to do the thing you want them to do that you've already taught them that they're supposed to do before the bar was ever on their back. And so you could spend a little bit of time, but even the teaching method, when we do this at our seminars, when we teach somebody how to squat for the first time, that entire teaching method of the squat is like a 3-minute teaching method. It's short because they don't need the whys in the beginning. They only need the hows. They've hired you for a reason. They trust you enough to trust you with the hows. What's fun about this is over the course of their first month, supposedly, or we'll like assume that the client has already signed up for 1 month of coaching. So you got them for a month. So you got them for 12 sessions or 16 sessions or something like that. So you got an opportunity to start working in the whys between the sets. In the beginning, we just want to keep it to the hows. So in the teaching method, hows only, no whys. They've already hired you. So they trust you as a coach enough to go like, I'm going to pay you money to teach me how to squat. So just teach them how to squat. Don't teach them why to squat or why. Like that will come as we go, right? And so we teach them the hows. And then when we get to the lifting, the actual cues, you keep it to very simple, the sit back, knees out, mid foot, bar back, like whatever that thing is, right?
Right.
Hip drive. Sometimes I'll say, hold the back angle, which is probably too much, right? Because what I'm trying to do is don't get bent over too much, but I don't want to tell them,
don't use the negative.
oddly enough, a 3-word positive cue is better than a 3-word negative cue because then they have to interpret what's the opposite of the negative.
Right.
Well, I don't want to get bent over too much, so it takes a little longer for them. So that's the other thing about the cues is the cues, we typically want to focus on the things that they should be doing correctly.
Right.
Not the things we don't want to tell them what they're doing wrong so that they have to interpret what the opposite of that is. Again, that's something you can talk about after the set.
Yeah. And what the art is, I think, comes down to you visually absorbing a rep.
Yep.
Taking that in with your eyes, evaluating it with your brain. And then you have to spit something out verbally. And then it has to be the same from them. They are not seeing anything, but they hear you. They have to translate that and turn it into movement. So that is actually a lot of steps that have to occur in a super short amount of time.
That's exactly right.
And it combines how you see it, what you compare it to versus what you know, and then how you can most quickly make a difference in that rep and most quickly tell it to them so that they can hear it and for them to translate into something that they understand that's going to manifest itself in a movement.
That's a lot of stuff. That's exactly right. And especially when there's a big heavy barbell on your back.
Yeah.
And like the octave in the music drops, like the music drops an octave and everything's quiet and like your blood pressure's up and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, that's why on a platform, I don't think you have to scream at people, but you got to make sure they can hear you.
Yeah.
You also have to make sure that your voice inflection is correct for what you're trying to, if it's something you need them to change, it might be a little more assertive. Mm-hmm. Whereas if it's just like, I will say, and I'm not going to say everybody should do this, but I've developed a habit. I say something on every single rep if I'm in person, which is often just good, great, just like that. Because I've taught my clients, they're listening for. So there's really a thing where on most lifts, I think you have the opportunity primarily for 2 cues, depending on the lift. You have often a setup cue. So if they're doing a press or something, so it's like, okay, let's make sure, close grip, elbows forward, wrist straight. Good. Well, now they don't have to think about that. They take the press out of the rack, they walk back. Now they're not thinking about close grip, elbows forward, wrist straight because they're there. So now what's the cue? Like, okay, it's like, close to your face. Aim for the nose. Punch through the ceiling. Punch through the brick wall. Like whatever those things are. And so that becomes the cue that's going on. Well, if they do that well, I almost always will say, great, just like that. Perfect.
Yeah, you want to let them know. Yeah.
Because what I'm trying to tell them is just do the same thing on the next rep.
Yep.
I don't have to change anything. There's nothing to be changed now.
And you've let them know that the way they felt that previous rep equals good.
That's exactly right.
And so they can know like, oh, I need to make it feel like that again.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And this is different for in-person coaching versus online coaching. I think we have an opportunity where, again, the difference is actually what the client is experiencing when they're hearing the visual cues. And so I think most people know at this point for us at Barbell Logic, we primarily use screen recordings. And so if you are coaching in person, the client is hearing what the input is coming into their ear while there's a heavy weight on their back. And so they're trying to interpret all of those things that you just laid out while also, oh, by the way, trying to lift this really heavy weight. In online coaching, we do screen recordings primarily now. And so that if I were coaching you squatting, you would upload a video of you squatting, and then you get to see what I see and hear me talk through that. So it's almost like you're having an out-of-body experience from the lifting, where now you get to not just be the lifter, but you get to pull back and see what the camera sees and what the coach sees. It's one of the advantages I think we have in online coaching. Certainly the disadvantage is I can't clean up every rep of every set real time. Like I can only clean up a thing from session to session. But I often think that those things that we clean up from session to session stick better in online coaching, because the client can then see, oh, here's what my coach has seen. We can stop. And this is where in real-time coaching, you often only have verbal cues. Like, yes, there are times that we'll use occasional visual cues or tactile cues with like a tubo or a something. But for the most part, in in-person coaching, you only get the verbal cues. In online coaching with a screen recording, you always get the combo of visual and verbal. So it attaches those two things. And I think it sort of like really cuts it out in stone for our clients. You have to be careful online to still not say too many words. So there's often times where I'll walk through what I'm seeing and I'll use a few too many words and I'll kind of teach through, but then I'll always capstone it with, here's the primary cue, which is always still 2 to 3 words to remember for next time.
Yeah, because you want your voice in their head next time they're lifting.
And I don't want the whole teaching piece. I just want those like 2 to 3 words.
Right.
And some of my favorite clients, or one of my favorite habits of a client, is when they actually print off those words and they put them on the floor and then they get ready to squat and they're like looking at the cues on the floor. I'm like, yeah, they actually care about what we said. And so I think those verbal cues, man, they really, really matter. And so it's,
yeah.
The other hard part about this is when the verbal cue doesn't work, what do you do?
Just say it louder. Say it louder 5 more times.
For all 5 reps, say the exact same thing, but just get a little bit like, a little louder every
louder
time. No,
and
for
more
real, what do you do?
Each time.
I like the angry. I'm actually frustrated with you by the 4th rep. Do the thing I keep saying.
Clearly, you were the one having the problem here.
You're not listening. I do that sometimes with my online coaching clients where it's like I'm giving them cues. Like it's 24 hours later.
Right.
And I'm like, get off your toes. Did you not just hear what I said on rep 3? Like they didn't just hear it. I'm watching a video.
So you were in a different time zone.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, like you have to be able to, the more you work with someone, the more you can kind of see more quickly that, you know, they just didn't understand what you were saying. So you can repeat a cue once to kind of reaffirm your certainty of that.
Yes.
And see if, you know, it just didn't compute the previous time and maybe the volume was off. So I think you can repeat a cue exactly the same for another rep. But if that's not sinking in, if you're not seeing what you want, time to say that cue in a different way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And volume, I know, is a really tough one for a lot of new coaches. I think it still continues to be a tough one for me, depending on how big the room is. So you have to make sure, like, I know it's helpful to watch a rep rather far away, but sometimes, you know, we'll do that thing where we'll just like lunge in as a coach and get really low and close to their ears and like send the cue and then lunge back. Like make sure that they can actually hear you. Yeah. Because you don't want to like make them guess what you were saying.
That's right. That's right. Were you at the seminar in St. Louis where I did this with a client out of nowhere. I can't remember if you were there, and it was with one of Dan's clients. I don't think you were there. Andrew was there for sure.
It might not have been.
So we were doing a coaching seminar, and one of our great coaches, a guy that's a great coach for us, was still learning in this process. This is several years ago. And he was teaching a young lady, I don't know, she was probably in her mid-20s, how to press. And she had definitely never overhead pressed in her whole life. And Cody Miller from the Strength Parlor had brought in some newbies for these up-and-coming coaches to coach, people they'd never met before. And I noticed that the culture had been from the past, like, just be assertive all the time on the platform. Yell it, be assertive, be authoritative, do the thing. And I could see on this girl's face, she was like getting more and more terrified. And so I said, I just stopped the whole room. And I was like, watch. I'd never met her. And so I walked up and I just was like, you're going to do great. I know you're nervous. I've taught tens of thousands of people how to do this. Like, promise you, you'll be great at this. Like, just listen to my words and just do the words that I say. Here's what I want you to do. Point your knuckles at the ceiling. So it was a press, right? So her wrists are all bent. Point your knuckles at the ceiling. And I was like, now just take a deep breath and just press it overhead, but make it as close to your nose as you can. And she pressed it, right?
Using that late night DJ voice.
Yeah, it was like real, and I was close, and nobody else could even hear. I don't even know if anybody else in the room could hear what I was saying. It didn't matter. What mattered is they understood that you have to be in tune with the emotions and the personality of the client. And like, it didn't even matter to the rest of the room what the words were that I was saying. It was that you don't always have to yell at the client. Like, if the client's starting to freak out.
Yeah.
I've had clients before that have come in. I've had, overweight men and ladies both who on a squat were like so terrified that they were going to get to the bottom of the squat, they were just going to fall down.
Right.
And so at the top, I say, hey, I will not let you fall. I promise. And sometimes that means I put a box underneath them. So just like, hey, if something happened, you sit on the box.
Yeah.
But like, I'm going to be right here and I'm not going to like, you're trying to give them assurance as a coach. So it's not just about the teaching of the method or the cueing of the correct movement. It's about giving them some confidence and assurance as a coach. This is a huge piece, to be able to give them confidence and assurance.
Totally.
That they can do the thing. And I get this with online coaching too. I had a client, a smaller guy. I mean, got a small frame, like short guy, small frame. And, he's pressing 150 for the first time. And I'm like, I know you've got this. You've done this for 25 years. I've watched you train. If you hit your groove, you will hit this no problem. And if you don't, it's just because you missed the groove, not because the strength is not there. And to give them that sort of assurance, like, well, coach believes in me. And you've often said this before. We are often the only people that actually care as much about our clients' training as our clients. Their spouses don't care as much, their kids, their family, they're like, care some. Like, we are genuinely invested in this thing. And so I think that's the other piece. Like, and that's the connection piece. We're not drill sergeants. This is, by the way, the big difference I see between what even good Division I and professional coaches, strength coaches, do with their athletes when their athletes are forced to come in and train versus what we do in the private sector, which is like, I have to make the connection or they'll leave.
Yeah.
That kid who's the sophomore at Alabama playing football doesn't get to play as a junior if he doesn't do the workouts in the off season.
Yeah.
So he's just going to do the workouts whether he hates the coach or not. So the coach doesn't even have to spend time. Now, there's a lot of great strength coaches out there that do spend the time, that sort of model like what life should look like for these young men or lady athletes. And so, but for us, we have to do that for everybody. And so it's not just about the teaching of the method or the cueing of the lift, but the actually walking through and building the relationship. That takes some time. And I think that's so much more effective in verbal communication than I think back what we used to do with the typed feedback. We used to watch our clients' videos and we would type their feedback. Well, how many times have you had a text or a message on Instagram or something and it's typed and you just are trying to figure out, are they joking? Are they mean? Are they like, you can't infer the emotion behind it, right?
Mm-hmm. Are they trolling me with this?
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like what you're getting at is through text, you really miss the importance of certain things. And you said earlier, like the inflection and how you want them to hear it during the rep, because there can be a lot of power in the tone that you use during the set too.
That's right.
Like sometimes there's a cue you want to deliver to make them feel really calm.
Yep.
And just be like, you know what, trust your midfoot, keep them focused on that. And then there might be a cue where you need to amp them up Be like,
That's right.
Fast through the middle now.
That's right.
Like hold your chest now so that you can reinforce the importance of what you're trying to make them feel in that moment. And that does, we do use caps and exclamation points and GIFs.
Sure.
in text. But yeah, there's that extra significance with the actual sound of it.
That's exactly right. Yep. I love the way you say that. So on every rep for my clients in person, they're trying to get some sort of feedback that like, am I doing this right? Or do I need to change a thing? So if they're doing it right, I don't give them silence because I think at the top of a squat, they'll be like, is coach trying to figure out what I did wrong there? And he's going to give me like, so I want to go like, good, do that again. Great. Perfect. Or if they're grinding on rep 4 and they got one more, you're like, you've got this. Deep breath, be confident coming out of the hole, fire out of the hole and be ready to grind. And so take the deep breath. Here we go down. And they know because they've heard from me, like, I'm confident they're going to hit it. How many times have you seen a client who gets ready to do their last rep and you can already tell they've given up mentally?
Yeah, they gave up on rep 3.
Yeah, and they go down and they just set it on the pins. And you're like, you didn't even try, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all of those things are important.
As I listen to you say this, it's really our job to help them be successful in what they're trying to do for that rep or for that set. And there's a lot going on in their heads. They're trying to seek your validation. They want your approval.
Yep.
They also have this idea in their mind of the perfect squat, the perfect deadlift. They maybe have that pressure of like, if I get this, it'll be a PR and it's what I've been wanting my entire life. Like there's this existential significance that's on it. And it's really our job to give them that one little nugget that they need in that moment that kind of quiets all that other stuff up. Just reduces the noise and helps them do that one little bit that gets them to the next accomplishment.
I often think that might be the hardest thing to do as a coach. Really shows the experience.
Yeah.
The two things that I can see out of a coach that shows that this coach is experienced, they've done this many, many times before, is, as we talked about earlier, when you give the cue that works 80 or 90% of the time and it doesn't work, and you're able to give another cue and it doesn't work on rep 3, and you give another cue on rep 4 and it finally works, and like, that's it. And do a rep 5, you're like, okay, this coach has got the extra tools in their tool bag. They're like, there's more than one way to skin the cat. And so like, here's the cue that works normally. Okay, it didn't work for you. So now I'm going to go to the next one. Dang it, that one didn't work either. Okay, I'm going to go to this one, right?
And don't get frustrated with the lifter.
No, and even I say that all the time online. I frequently will say, if a lifter's struggling with like setting their back on a deadlift or something, I say, I just want to let you know, I tell them, I'm not frustrated about this at all. I can see that you're frustrated, that you're struggling to set your back. We're going to fix this. We're going to figure this out. So like, if you're patient, I'll be patient. Please don't get frustrated with yourself. I'm not frustrated. I've got a whole bunch more cards to play here, but we're just going to play one at a time. Because if I play 17, you're going to remember 16 of them, right? And so that's the other thing to be able to communicate with your clients. Like, hey, we're professionals at our job. This is not like, if you struggle with a thing, we're like, well, maybe I should just fire this client. You don't, as a matter of fact, for me, it's actually sort of like the fun part of my job where you go like, okay, now I get to troubleshoot this a little bit. And so I think that's really important. And then the other one, like you said, that really shows good experience of a great coach is when a coach knows how to calm somebody down just as much as they know how to fire somebody up. Firing somebody up is easy, right? You watch any of these videos from high school weight rooms and college weight rooms, and all the guys are screaming and yelling, and these guys are in these like ridiculous power cleans that look like reverse curls, and they drop to the bottom, and it's ridiculous. And being able to calm somebody down, go take a deep breath, focus on form, go down slow. You'll be just fine. And then they do that thing. Like that is sometimes the most needed thing, because you'll watch somebody that wants to just get the set over with and they like dive bomb the squat or they dive bomb the top of the press. And you're like, whoa, you're just like catching the thing at the bottom.
They're 10 steps ahead of themselves and they're causing them to mess up the second step.
That's right. So we're trying to slow the thing down. It's very rare that I speed somebody up on any lift. I mean, occasionally if I'm doing an actual explosive lift, like a clean, but it's pretty rare. Like I'm mostly trying to slow them down, especially on the eccentric component or the lowering component of the lift. And so, okay, I want to take a second. I got to tell you. So I don't know that we've got video on this. We're trying a new video hosting site, so you can't see it. You can see this beautiful baby blue t-shirt that I'm wearing.
It looks really nice. It's really crisp.
It is very crisp. So what I love about this is that we have a company, Fresh Clean Tees, who are sponsoring our podcast now. And here's what I love about it. We went after them. We get emails every day from companies that are trying to go after us and they want to advertise on the podcast. It does great numbers. But I've been wearing Fresh Clean tees for several years. It's the only t-shirt I wear. So they're
And the brand is Fresh Clean Tees, not just that you're wearing a shirt that you actually washed.
correct. So it's both a Fresh Clean tee and the name brand is Fresh Clean Tee, which is kind of great and a little bit meta. So the thing about Fresh Clean tees is that they're no logo tees.
Oh, nice.
Right? Like I got to the point where like, guys, listen, I'm not talking down to you, but I see this with my clients still. Like, don't be wearing Spider-Man logo t-shirts. Like, we're grown-ups now, right? No logo. We don't wear logo tees.
No comment.
You don't want the giant. It doesn't matter. You know, the giant, I won't name pick your athletic brand. It doesn't matter what it is. Like any athletic brand, massive logos on the chest. Okay, great when you're 19 years old. Most of us are in our 40s. No logo tee that is super soft, lasts a long time. And what's best about the Fresh Clean tees is they fit so well. Like you can see, it fits really well in the chest, shoulders, and arms. Like it's tight, but not overly tight. And then it's loose enough in the belly and waist to kind of hide the belly and potentially the love handles in the back. And so they are the perfect fitted tee. By the way, there are several t-shirt brands out there that do this. I have tested them all. I tested them all when I hired Tanner. I just started ordering all these different ones. And Fresh Clean tees, I've probably purchased on my own 40 of these t-shirts.
Wow.
I buy them all the time because they do great deals with like 3-packs and stuff, and you get all kinds of different colors.
Super affordable.
They're super affordable. These are not $60 t-shirts. These are $20 or less t-shirts that last a long time. They wash really well. They're already pre-shrunk, so when you dry them, they dry really well. They don't pill. Like I've worn the heck out of all these tees. So they've got great tees. They've got V-necks. They've got polos. They've got all this stuff. So you've got all of this stuff that they've done. And like you pair these tees. What I like about this is you pair these tees. These tees are also great workout tees.
Oh, nice.
The older ones that I've had is I've rotated out. Like I work out in the dark blue ones, the navy ones, the black ones, the dark gray, the charcoal. I work out in those all the time. But they also look great with like a pair of like 5-inch khakis and the white shoes. And so you can wear them to the restaurant. You can wear them to the Olive Garden and go middle class fancy. or Texas Roadhouse or wherever you're going. So whatever, pick your chain. So no, I love Fresh Clean tees. Again, I pursued them. They saw what we did. They love what we do. They love the clients that we have. It's a great lookalike audience. Like these t-shirts are going to look great if you're jacked and 6% body fat, but they're also going to look great if you're new in your strength journey and you're just starting to put on some muscle in your arms and your shoulders, but you still have that beer belly and you're still trying to like lose that weight. They're going to look great regardless. And they've got a special deal just for Barbell Logic listeners. Where do they go?
So if you want to wear some shirts that fit you well with a nice material, which really goes a long way in presenting yourself well to other people, I think. Go to freshcleantees.com and you can use the discount code LOGIC at checkout and you get 15% off. Or as always, you can go to barbelllogic.com/podcast and you'll see all of our recent relevant content and how you can check out our sponsors, including these Fresh Clean Tees. Again, that's LOGIC as a discount code and that gets you 15% off.
Yeah, which is a great deal. And they always do like bundle deals as well. And I'll say this, if you go back and you watch our YouTube videos, any t-shirt that doesn't have a logo that I'm wearing, as a matter of fact, there was a brand, shall remain nameless. It was an athletic brand that I used to wear all the time. And you'll watch me transition over a couple years ago, year and a half ago, to much cleaner looking t-shirts, much better fitted t-shirts. Every one of those t-shirts are Fresh Clean tees. So I've been buying these guys for a couple of years and I was like, we got to get these guys on the podcast. And they loved it. And so they're in. So
it's way better than that other
brand. That's right. That's exactly right. So feel a little less frat boyish. That's for sure. So it fits well. So check us out, check them out, and support the podcast as well. Okay. Anything else on the verbal communication that we want to walk through before we wrap the show up? What are the big takeaways here?
I think the takeaways, something you said in the beginning, is it needs to be really efficient. It needs to be something that is short and understandable, and it makes them focus on how, and you can speak to the why between sets or even later as you work together more, but make it focused on the why. Meet them where they're at in terms of their level of understanding and their level of focus, and help them control their level of focus so that they feel confident. They feel like they can trust your cues, and you have to be confident in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because they'll hear that.
And some of that will only come with experience. You can read so much, But until you actually get in front of people and actually do this, it comes back to that idea of the best way to tackle a thing that you have anxiety about is to do the thing.
Yeah.
And so if you're nervous to coach in front of people or coach in front of people that you're scared to coach in front of or coach in front of other great coaches, or you're like, I'm terrified, the more you do that, the easier it becomes. I will just reiterate what you said. I think that's great. I think learning how to teach efficiently and effectively is super important. Learning how to cue even more efficiently when the barbell is on their back or in their hands is incredibly important, but also how to use your own voice inflection and emotion to elicit not just the movement change that you want out of your client, but the emotion that you want out of your client. When do you want to light a fire under your client's ass? I'm like, here we go, here we go, here we go, versus when is it time to calm them down? You'll be great. Believe in yourself. I know you've got this. Those are the big three pieces of verbal communication. Again, and then what I love about this, and we'll get to this more in future episodes, is I get to do this and you get to do this and our coaches get to do this every day in online coaching. And it gets to pair, our clients get to not just hear it while the barbell is on their back, but they get to hear what we're saying and see what we're seeing by these screen recordings for online coaching, which is great. So it really puts it together. People are different learners. Some people are visual learners and some people are auditory learners and some people. So it really kind of hits that from all angles. And often people are not just one, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm definitely an auditory learner, but visual definitely sort of, I get a picture and then I hear all that auditory piece or that written piece like overlaid on the picture, on the sight picture I have in my mind. And so rather than just trying to feel what it feels like in real person, in real time and hear from your coach online, you actually get to see what they see. And you actually start to picture like, here's what I look like personally in the bottom of a squat and what my coach is telling me. And I think that's really, really great. So as a coach, focus on what you want to teach them, the hows first, and then the hows or the changes you want to make via cues under the lift, under the barbell. Make sure that you're getting the right emotion. If they're freaking out, if they're overhyped, if they're underhyped, learn how to get the right emotion out of the client. And then spend the time between the sets or between the workouts or in the downtime, spending some time having fun talking about the whys. That's when the whys come in. Here's why we do it this way. Here's why we low bar squat. Here's why we sit back. Here's why we maybe, would go with conventional for a newer client instead of a sumo deadlift. And not that there's anything wrong with sumo a long time. Like you can kind of explain those things, but that's not in the teaching method and the coaching method and the cueing. And that's not the time to explain that stuff. So hows first, whys second, control your emotions and control the room and control the platform so that you help get your client in the right emotional state as well. And that's when everybody wins. And so that's what I love about communication. So
awesome.
Love it. So that's verbal communication. We'll start to tackle the next couple of weeks. We'll tackle tactile, which is relatively impossible online. We'll talk about it in person. I mean, sometimes we use it. I'll even talk about, I think we can come up with some places where we do use it online, but the client has to set that up themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then visual and how we use visual cues, both in person and online, the opportunity to be able to online pause a video, draw on a video, show things that are going on versus visual in person where they can actually see something or they're looking at a thing or they're setting their eye gaze. Those become a little more complicated. Verbal is the primary form of communication that we use as coaches to our clients, but these other ones we don't want to leave behind because there's certainly additional tools in the toolbox that can help reinforce what we're trying to verbally communicate. So, and communication is key as a coach. You have the best eye in the world, and if you can't tell the person or teach them what to do or tell them what to do and have them actually change it, you're not really a coach. You're an armchair quarterback. That's what you're doing. And so to be able to actually elicit those results, I think that's really key.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Perfect. Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast. Again, we love a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Go to Fresh Clean Tees and get yourself some t-shirts. Man, I'm telling you, they're great. You'll love it. If you hate them, I'll just buy them back from you. I mean, as long as they're not mediums, although maybe, I don't know, like I'll throw them on. So no, get some good Fresh Clean Tees. They've got all sorts of colors. They've got great t-shirts, V-necks, polos, and they're great prices, logo free. So you don't look like you're walking around like a NASCAR, like advertising somebody's brand. Like you get to be you. And I think that's the key with some of this style stuff is like, I want to present me.
Right.
I don't want to present this giant logo of like, oh, I'm, like I would never wear, it's like Gucci or something. Like, I'm not going to wear a t-shirt that says Gucci. Like, well, I'm just like a No.
You paid
I'm
to
not gonna do that.
advertise for them.
That's right. I'm not getting paid to advertise. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about these t-shirts. They're like, hey, it stands on the performance of the t-shirt, not the logo of the t-shirt. And that alone, I think, really fits the culture at Barbell Logic. So Fresh Clean Tees, discount code LOGIC, and hook yourself up with a 15% discount. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you next time.
Have a good one.